Hi, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Up Show. I am Chris Phillips, and we are just 11 days away from kickoff in Charlotte, North Carolina. First off, if you do want to follow the show, be sure to check us out on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Be sure to go there, rate, subscribe. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like about the show. We love to hear all the feedback. Also, this is a podcast brought to you by Armchair All-Americans. Armchair All-Americans, localizing your sports coverage. Be sure to check us out on armchairallamericans.com for all your South Carolina Gamecocks latest breaking news there, as well as, of course, the podcast. Also, be sure to follow us on our Twitter account at ArmchairSCAR. That's at ArmchairSCAR for all the latest news there as well. And tweet us your feedback. We'd like to see all the tweets and hear your feedback there as well. And also be sure to follow us on our Instagram account at ArmchairSCarolina, getting that up and running. So be sure to check us out on there as well. So, as always, I'm joined by my colleague, Tyler Clark. Tyler, like I mentioned, we're just 11 days away. Season is creeping closer, and I feel like this is kind of the point where the days start to get a little longer, start to drag on a little bit. How you feeling? You were obviously at the open practice, which we'll get to in a little bit, but how you feeling? How you feeling 11 days out from kick?
I'm excited. I just picked up Madden 18, which should hold me over until next weekend. The practice last night was really fun. I can't wait to talk about that. It's almost here.
Yeah, I saw that you actually got Madden. I'm a little jealous. I know that I'm still over here playing NCAA 14, so that I'm like playing the dynasty mode right now, just kind of simming or playing through each game. So if my games mean anything, we'll beat NC State 41-21. So
nice.
we can take that into consideration. But again, this is episode 13 of the Spurs Up Show. We're going to jump right into it with a little bit more recruiting news. I know we've been talking a lot of recruiting, Tyler, but something we got to touch on before we get in depth anymore. Josh Vann, the 4-star wide receiver from Tucker, Georgia, committed to the Gamecocks over the weekend. He actually had a big day, committed after his high school game Saturday morning, in which he had 7 catches for 157 yards, 3 touchdowns. He comes in at 5'11", 175 pounds. Like I said, a really, really big get for South Carolina, a really athletic kid, and a big get in the sense the Gamecocks beat out Georgia to get him. Tyler, he's a player we talked with Alex Reynolds on our show last week a little bit about. But, Tyler, what do you think the significance is, and how do you feel about the pickup of Josh Vann and, just South Carolina going into Georgia and kind of picking a guy up out of their backyard?
That's another huge Georgia pickup. Tucker's a huge school. So, I mean, a lot of things we see multiple Power 5 guys come out of multiple schools. Like the school Jemias came out of, they had so many D1 guys last year. So, I mean, once you start getting one, you start getting teammates. I think it could start a chain reaction, hopefully, in the middle of Georgia and kind of take some of those guys out of there.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a great get. I think it's like we had talked about before, Tyler, just another product of, kind of the Jake Bentley effect and guys being excited to come play in this offense and sort of seeing the growth of Jake Bentley. And I know that was something Josh Vann talked about. But, yeah, absolutely. Just being able to go into the state of Georgia, I was able to watch his highlights from Saturday. I mean, the kid's a playmaker, that's for sure. He looked awesome in that game. So another recruit, actually, I was going to ask if you saw this, Tyler. Did you see the highlight of Jonathan Gibson, the 97-yard punt return?
Yes.
Kind of a funky play where the ball was kept in bounds and he picked it up, ran 97 yards, kind of showed off the speed there. So, good weekend for him as well. But, yeah, just a huge commitment from Josh Vann. And, as we talked with Alex last week, maybe this is going to kind of start the chain reaction of the 4-star guys kind of falling, some of the bigger recruits, if you will. We've gotten a ton of 3-stars, but hopefully this starts kind of a chain reaction of those 4-star guys falling like you mentioned. So moving off recruiting, like I mentioned, and as you mentioned, Tyler, you were at the Gamecocks held an open practice on Monday night for fans. It was also the same day as the solar eclipse, which I know everyone on Twitter was talking about. Tyler, you were there at the open practice. Just before I get into, picking your brain a little bit and ask you some questions about the practice as a whole, what were some of your kind of takeaways from the practice? What did you see out there, and what did you kind of come away? How did you come away feeling from it?
It was an absolutely perfect night, and I didn't think as many people would show up as they did. There was probably a couple thousand people. It was fun. it was interesting. I didn't expect them to have crowd noise put in for an open practice, but it was loud. It was like a full stadium. So, I mean, it was really cool to see kind of how they prepare and how the practices kind of run.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that, you were obviously tweeting everything out. First question I want to ask you, just because I'm curious, how did the new lettering on the press box look?
It looks incredible because that's the thing that's really bothered me about Williams-Brice. Everything has kind of switched since 2010 or so to that new kind of lettering, and the rest of it stood up there. It just stood there for the rest of it, and that lettering's been there since I was a kid going to games. I think it looked terrible. So when that storm kind of knocked off the letters, I kind of realized.
Yeah, kind of a blessing in disguise, if you will, because that lettering was definitely up there, since the Holtz days. So I was really definitely glad to see them update that and the south end zone as well. The Gamecock in the south end zone, was definitely glad to see them get that update. It was definitely way, way out of date. You could tell just by how faded it was. So, definitely awesome to always see, more stadium improvements. Awesome to see, the staff really taking care of that. So moving into the scrimmage, I know that you had talked about A.J. Turner a little bit, kind of what he did last night. I know out of the backs, obviously South Carolina comes in this season with a loaded backfield with A.J. Turner, Rico Dowdle, and Tyson Williams. And I think we've talked about, at least I know I've talked about, this being Rico's backfield, and I'm really looking for Tyson Williams to steal the show. But it sounded like, Tyler, last night from your analysis that A.J. Turner really was the one of the three backs that kind of showed out last night.
He definitely stood out. He stood out catching balls out of the backfield. He stood out the offensive line kind of opened up a lot more holes for him than anyone else. And then he kind of got outside for a couple of runs. I want to say before we talk about any of these guys, I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt because obviously it's practice. But, I don't want to overreact when I'm saying this stuff. But it looked way better than any of the other running backs.
Right. No, yeah. Were they that was one question I actually have for you. Were they tackling to the ground, or was it just contact?
It was on contact. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, definitely it's just kind of like the spring game. You don't want to overreact to anything. But at least with A.J. Turner, we know what he can do. I mean, we saw it last year really with Rico too. We know what he can do. And that was one thing you had texted me about was just the size that looked like Rico's put on. I mean, I've seen pictures of him in the preseason camp, and he was looking swole.
A lot of the guys just look bigger, which is good.
Yeah, I know that's one thing Muschamps actually talked about is, the job they've done with the strength and conditioning program. I definitely think it's going to pay off too. And there's some guys like a Dante Sawyer, like an Alan Knott that, either, were hurt or whatnot, what have you, weren't able to lift last year that I think are going to benefit from a summer of lifting. You can ask any athlete, you take that many months off from lifting, it's definitely going to have an effect on you. So, I know another thing that you had talked about as well was the play of Michael Scarnecchia in the backup QB role. How did he look? How does it? I mean, obviously, if Jake Bentley goes down, we're in a world of trouble. But how much better do you feel now about the backup quarterback situation?
Yeah, earlier I said I didn't even know if Scarnecchia would be the number 2 guy, but after last night, just watching him throw the ball, not even being in the pocket, just throwing the ball on the sideline, it looks so much better. His mechanics look so much better. But then when they started doing 11 on 11, he looked really, really good. I remember there was one ball that was over the middle. It was probably a 10-yard in, and he threw it like 4 yards behind Ortre Smith. It was really bad. Other than that, he looked fantastic. He threw a pretty good deep ball, and the little swing routes and stuff like that, they look great.
Great, yeah, and also you mentioned Ortre Smith. One question I had for you was the Smith boys, if you will, Ortre Smith, Shi Smith, really all of the younger receivers. Were there any that really stood out to you, any of those younger guys? I know that Will Muschamp and company have kind of established their 5-man rotation of Debo, Brian Edwards, the 2 Smiths, and Terry Guger. How did those guys look to you, and was there anybody else that – I know you had actually talked about Chad Terrell. You were asking me who number 86 was, the freshman.
He got a lot of targets.
Yeah, and
Chad Terrell got a lot of targets on second team, but Ortre just kind of stole the show, in my opinion. He ran some really good routes. He made Jamarcus King look stupid on one of them. which is probably not a good thing at all. But yeah, he made him look stupid on the sidelines. He had a touchdown catch, I'm pretty sure. Debo had a really nice jump ball touchdown. That's why I noticed last night they were a lot less reluctant to jump balls to kind of trust the guys, mostly Jake Bentley.
Was this in 1-on-1 drills, or was it on the 11-on-11?
No, this was 11-on-11.
This was 11-on-11. Okay.
Yeah, they were just going head to head.
Nice.
Yeah. So on defense, I was really only paying attention to Rashad Fenton and Jamarcus King because no one else. It doesn't really matter. Rashad Fenton looked incredible, and Jamarcus looked good, but Orchard just made him look stupid on that one play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing we had kind of talked about. I know he's put on that weight, and I'm sure he's one of the guys out there that looks a little bit bigger, a little bit more, in shape and everything. But that's going to be kind of, I think, his biggest challenge is going up against those bigger receivers, bigger SEC-type bodies, and really matching up with those guys. But, great to hear about Rashad Fenton. I know last year he got off to a real slow start, and I think he's definitely going to come back this year and have a much, much better year than he did last year. I think he's a guy with a lot of upside and a guy that the coaching staff really likes too. And I mean, he's had a solid career so far, but I definitely think this year is going to be a really good year for him. Also, I was going to ask you about how did Sky Moore look? I know that I'm sure they probably didn't do too much hitting, but was there any indication to let you know that he wasn't 100% fully healthy, or does he look like the Sky Moore of old out there?
I mean, he wasn't really out there that much. I mean, it wasn't that he wasn't healthy, but a lot of the times he was in pass rush and not really getting back on receivers or anything. So he was in pass rush, and by the time he gets in there, somebody's already down by contact. So
gotcha.
The linebackers you didn't really see much, or safeties you didn't see much. They were just kind of targeting the corners. But the linemen were going just 100%. A lot more physical. I'm sure you saw the videos that were on Twitter of Taylor Stallworth. He was a freaking beast, just destroying offensive linemen. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, he looked really good. Did you get to catch DJ Wanham at all? I don't feel like I've heard his name a while. Well, we haven't gotten much access from practice or any kind of coaches speaking on anything, but I feel like I haven't heard DJ Wanham's name in a while. For if you don't hear his name for about a week, I feel like it's too long. As good as he is. Yeah.
AJ Turner they were in single back, and he had a handoff, and DJ Wanham got there in a split second. It was probably a 4-yard loss, and then he went to the sideline after that, and I don't think he played much after that. But that one play, it was insane. It was like Clowney getting into the backfield that fast, right. But he couldn't hit him, so
untouched. Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of you got to take it with a grain of salt because defense knows what the offense is doing, and also, they're not going full 100% to the ground, fully tackling. So, got to take it what it is. But like you said, a guy like DJ Wanham, we're pretty confident. We know you kind of know what you're going to get out of him, and how much better he can even be than last year. So, sort of segueing into the unit we're going to preview today, which is the special teams. Going to take a brief look at them. Obviously, in the 11-on-11, I heard that. The 11-on-11 ended with Alex Wozniak missing a 50-yard field goal.
Definitely.
Talk about the kickers last night. I know that you had actually tweeted about Joseph Charlton, or is it Carlton? Is it Charlton or Carlton? Charlton. Okay. Charlton. Joseph Charlton, the punter, had a couple really nice punts last night. Talk about, from your perspective, the kicking game last night. What did you see? Obviously Wozniak was very inconsistent in the spring game, and Muschamp has said before that he has all the potential, but he also said earlier or later last week, in the past week, that the kicking competition is definitely open. Parker White's kind of come out of nowhere and made it a competition with Wozniak. What's your overall feel from the kicking situation just after watching last night?
All right, so the punting that I was commenting about, that wasn't in the 11-on-11. They were just punting from the 50 to see how close they could get it inside, and I thought Charlton looked way better. So many inside the 1, and they looked effortless. And a lot of Michael Allmans were at the 10, or they just didn't have pop to them. I mean, I'm obviously taking that with a grain of salt too, but just going by what I saw, kicking the Wozniak field goal that he missed was wide left. I didn't really have a chance. So, and then after the 11-on-11s, they kind of all gathered, like the videos you see on Twitter when someone's winning a scholarship, how the whole team is surrounding them.
Right.
So they kind of had a kicking contest, but they were I couldn't see who any of them were. A couple of them were missed, and then someone boomed one from like 45 on the right hash that just split the uprights. It looked great, but I couldn't tell who it was. So
yeah,
that kind of pissed me off.
Yeah, from what I saw on Twitter, I think both guys actually nailed their kicks, and they were having like coaches throw water on them and stuff. So that's going to be a really interesting battle, and that's going to move us into. We're going to preview the special teams a little bit, dive in because special teams is going to be, a big area of focus this year for South Carolina as the Gamecocks do lose their all-time leader in points scored in Elliott Fry. Just a couple stats on Elliott: 161 for 162 on extra points, 66 for 88 on field goals, which is a 75% mark, which is pretty solid. Obviously he's made some big kicks under pressure. The first one that comes to mind, most recent at least, last year against Vanderbilt. What was it? A 54-yarder, I think it was.
I think it was 53 or 54.
Right, yeah, right over 50 to beat Vanderbilt. As we said, coming from the preseason, going into the preseason, it looked to be Alex Wozniak seemed to be the leading candidate to replace him. Muschamp said in the past week that there is competition in that position with Parker White stepping up. Obviously, Tyler, we've got a week and a half to the season, but right now, let me put you in a situation. South Carolina is tied 35-35, and they need a field goal to win the game. How you feeling, and what's your trust level with just the kicking game in general? I don't really care who's lining up. How do you feel about putting your trust in an unknown guy with a 45-yard field goal?
I mean, you kind of have to, but you don't want to. Just get the first down on third down. I'll say that. But I mean, the kickers didn't look bad. They have boots, but from what we saw in the spring game, it didn't look very good. But I'm sure Wozniak's going to win the job. So I mean, we're just going to have to trust him.
Yeah, I would say Wozniak's definitely the favorite too. It's definitely one of those things where it's just all about consistency. I mean, like you said, in the spring game, he was inconsistent, but he definitely had some. I mean, he piped him right in the middle. And, I think it was Muschamp said in the first scrimmage that Wozniak actually hit a game-winning field goal that he said would have been good from 60 yards. So, I mean, the kid's obviously got a really good leg. It's just about, can you do it in front of 85,000 people that are all screaming at you? And, that's why they do these drills, but there's nothing that's going to replace that feel on game day, or if that situation arises against NC State where you got to kick to win it, or against any team this season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, it's definitely not a good feeling for, my opinion, just because, we've talked before, you're going to have a really good offense, but you're going to have a defense that early in the season is going to be kind of struggling and coming along, at least we assume. And, you might have to rely on that kicking game, in order to either keep you in a ball game or win a ball game. And, so I think South Carolina is going to really rely on their their offense to either get really close in field goal range or score. And I think, it'll be really interesting to see, if they do struggle in the kicking game, will they continue to kick field goals? Will they just try to go for it on fourth down and assume they got a better chance to get it that way? Because as good as the offense is, you got to think you can get, a 4th and 5 or less, in my opinion. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But, I think Wozniak's got all the capability in the world, and it'll just be all about consistency for him. But definitely not an easy task following up a legend like Elliott Fry, all that he did for South Carolina football. So you mentioned the punters a little bit, Tyler. I guess Michael Allman is the leading candidate to be the starting punter. Is that right, or is it Charlton?
I mean, I think Allman is the front runner right now, from what I've seen. I mean, I haven't seen much about Joseph Charlton being a punter at all. I just went by what I saw last night. But on the roster, Charlton's still just a place kicker, so I'm really not sure. I guess Allman is the punter. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be Michael Allman's job to lose there again. Allman, actually a local kid. He's from around where I'm from, right by Augusta, Georgia, North Augusta, South Carolina. So it'd be pretty cool to see him punt for the Gamecocks. But, yeah, I definitely think that one will be pure position. I think Allman will get that. Yeah. Moving in a little bit more the exciting side of the special teams, kickoff return and punt return, something that was abysmal in the Steve Spurrier era. I think that's a nice way of putting it. Saw a little bit of a resurgence last year. Debo Samuel had a kickoff return for a touchdown last year. Overall, his stats returning kicks was 16 returns for 431 yards, 1 touchdown. The other kickoff returner who had a bulk of the statistics was A.J. Turner, 13 returns for 321 yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but had some big returns. Remember Tyler, the beginning of the East Carolina game where he returned it all the way to, I think, the 20-yard line, got a horse collar.
That was insane.
That was a penalty. Literally the next play, Brandon McElwain runs him for a touchdown. First off, going back to Debo, do you think, and we're going to get a little bit more into the young guys as well, but how much, if any, do you think Debo will be used in the punt return game? Obviously, he was used so much last year in so many different roles. Do you think this coaching staff will put that extra burden on him to be in the punt return game at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I think they're going to have, like you said, enough choices with the young guys that they can pick one of them. Last year, obviously, all they did was want to catch the punt. They didn't care about returning it. So, I mean, I don't think they'll do that to Debo.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And then moving to A.J. Turner, I definitely think kickoff return's a good spot for him. I think he's explosive. And as you were talking about last night, he's shifty and has some good speed too. And he showed a knack last year for, not only on the kick return, he had the long one, but, the 75-yard run to start the A&M game. And he has a knack to kind of break it if he gets a little bit of space. So it could be a good spot for him. But Chris Lamons is another guy that returned punts last year, 9 punt returns for 71 yards. Didn't have a touchdown. But moving into kind of the punt return game, the specialists in general, obviously, Tyler, there's been a lot of talk of guys like Jamias Williams, Shi Smith kind of playing a role in the special teams game. Do you think – how much of a role do you think those guys play? Do you think they have the starting job, by NC State, or do you think that's something where they'll lean more so on Lamons or one of them, an older player to kind of take that role over, especially kind of in a big game, week 1 against NC State?
Want to get it in the other guys hurt like it did last year. Yeah, I think they'll trust him.
Yeah. I mean, I think Lamons personally. I think Lamons is going to get the nod first off. I think that's a role. I would see a guy like Shi Smith kind of taking it over with the speed and quickness they've been talking about with him, or even Jam Williams. I mean, seeing what he did in high school when he gets the ball in his hands, he was electric. So, but I do think early in the season they're going to lean on a guy like Chris Lamons to make sure, because I think early in the season, the number one goal for the punt return game, at least in my opinion, is just catch the football and don't turn it over. So, and you'd be kind of scared for a guy like one of these young guys to get a little too excited, a little too, looking at the rush before he catches it, make a mistake, and that's really the last thing you want to happen for a young player that's you're really going to be depending on all season. So, with that being said, we're going to move into some listener questions. We only had one today. I was a little late again getting the tweet out. I do apologize. I got to get better about that. From Cocky Talk, Gio Cocky asked, recent injuries to Jalen Dickerson, Chris Smith, Montac, and others have once again led to concerns in depth in the secondary. Do you think these injuries have affected the coach's thoughts on using Chris Lamons, Rashad Fenton, or Jam Williams to return punts or kicks? We kind of just talked about that. Obviously, with the depth is definitely a concern, but I think last year, even when South Carolina wasn't deep in the secondary, they were still using Lamons in the punt return game. So I don't think it's something. And that was one guy I kind of forgot about. I think Rashad Fenton could be a really good option there. He had the kickoff return for a touchdown against LSU. What was it, 2015 at LSU, the game that got moved to the Hurricane. Yeah, he had that kickoff return for a touchdown. So I definitely think that he could be a guy that could factor into that as well. But it'll be interesting to see. I think Jam Williams and Shi Smith and those younger guys will eventually be in the rotation. I would be surprised to see like Jamias Williams kind of take it over, but I think Lamons will kind of hold on to that early on.
I do too. Steven Montac, he was a full go last night. He looked pretty good.
He was a full go last night. I know they said he was in the boot. Is he out the boot already?
I think he was.
He was out the boot. Okay.
He was playing corner.
Yeah, they definitely need him to come back and be ready for NC State. I mean, with the losses they've had, and then Taven Jackson, being out for 2 to 3 weeks, they said he's going to probably miss NC State. I don't think the secondary can really afford any more hits at this point. So it'll definitely be welcome to get him back. So A little post show for you, Tyler. Were you able to see obviously there was an open practice tonight for students. I guess they just moved in. Were you able to see the open practice, the rendition to 2001 that they did? Justin King hinted at it earlier today. Were you able to see the video of that?
No, literally as soon as we were getting on to do this podcast, I saw the group chat with you and Alex, and you said you hated it, and I was like, I didn't even see it. So good, bad.
Hate's a strong word. Hate's a strong word because fans on Twitter love it. I'm kind of about it. So basically, what they did, you'll look at the video. They had the players run out to 2001. Obviously, when they run out of 2001, they do the smoke. They've added one new thing. Have you ever watched a Panthers game and see when they run out and they had like fire shooting out? Basically, they have like flames. They have like a contraption that shoots out fire out the top. And they have that now. They have that now like just outside the tunnel. So I don't know. I'm sort of in the middle because it does look cool, I guess. But it's one of those things where it's like 2001 is just such a tradition, and you're a school that
broke, don't fix it.
Right. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Right. So I'll be interested to see if they actually put it in place for the season or if this is something that Justin King is kind of messing with in a practice. But, I mean, like I said, it looked cool, and I think a lot of fans really like it. But me personally, I don't know if I don't think I'm old school. I think I'm just like every picture, every video of 2001 I can ever remember didn't have fire in it. So it's just like, why add that? And, I don't know. So also AP Top 25 came out. I don't have it right in front of me. I can pull it up. But Tyler, was there anything? Obviously, we kind of had a conversation about this. Our friends over at Tennessee were ranked 25th. God bless them. I don't know.
They're going to lose the first game, so that's not even.
Yeah, they're going to lose. Yeah, I could definitely see them losing to Georgia Tech. They were ranked 25th. Texas was ranked 23rd. I got to tell you, Tyler, you think that's crazy. I have seen Texas being ranked as high as 9th, 11th. Just some pretty absurd rankings. I'll give them 23rd over 9th. That's for sure. So
yeah, I'm not giving them
obviously else. I'm pulling the rankings up now. Obviously, the culprit at number 1 was Alabama. We'll get the full one. Okay, Alabama followed by Ohio State, Florida State, Southern Cal, Clemson at 5th, Penn State, Oklahoma, Washington, Wisconsin, Okie State, Michigan, Auburn, LSU, Stanford, Georgia, Louisville, Florida, Miami. Sorry about that. Miami, South Florida, Kansas State, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Texas, Washington State, and Tennessee. So others receiving votes. The Gamecocks didn't receive any votes. However, their week 1 opponent, the NC State Wolfpack, received 26 votes, which was good enough to put them at, 30th. So definitely some people that are high on NC State this year. The NC State Wolfpack right now are a 6-point favorite. And we will have a full breakdown of that game and preview of that game as next week, Tyler, is game week. Finally, game week. We can finally stop previewing everything and start talking about a football game and about matchups. So we will have that for you next week. A full breakdown. Should be a long show, and we're looking forward to it. So again, this is the Spurs Up Show. Like I said, be sure to check us out on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Please be sure to rate and subscribe. Tell us what you like and don't like about the show. Also, follow us on our Twitter account at ArmchairSCar. Again, at ArmchairSCAR. Again, check us out on Armchair All-Americans for all your latest breaking news in South Carolina Gamecock sports. And, of course, the podcast will be located there as well. And also follow us on Instagram at ArmchairSCarolina, our growing Instagram account. Please be sure to check us out there. So with that being said, we're 11 days away. Next week. And, Tyler, you got anything else or just counting down the days?
Nope, I'm going to go play Madden all night.
You go play Madden all night. All right, perfect. All right, well, that being said, as always, he's Tyler Clark, and I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you next week.